What's up, everyone? Chris Manning here from the Lockdown Cavs podcast, joined as always by my co-pilot, that's Evan Damerl. Today's show, we're going to focus a lot on Isaac Okoro because he is out once again, this time 2 to 3 weeks with an elbow sprain. We'll cover that, rotation implications, and more on this new episode of Locked on Cavs.
You are Locked on Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We do, by the way, want to thank you for making Locked on Cavs your hashtag first listen every single day. Remember, we are free and available on all platforms, and that includes YouTube, where we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Help us get there. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel right freaking now. Evan, a couple of housekeeping notes to get to before, just to lay down for folks where the news is at right now. Number one, Cleveland Cavaliers' postponed game against the Atlanta Hawks. That was originally scheduled for December 19th, is now scheduled for March 31st. That now creates a back-to-back for them. Will be playing at home on the 30th of March against the Dallas Mavericks, then play in Atlanta the next night to make up that game that was postponed when the Cavs had a COVID outbreak. Secondly, Rajon Rondo, unfortunately for me, will be wearing number 1. This was obviously most recently worn by Justin Anderson, who was on the team like a cup of coffee ago. Other notable players, Evan, to wear the number 1 for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think Daniel Gibson is obviously very famous for this. James Jones, champ himself, wore number 1. Can you name some of the other Cavs players in recent history, let's say 2003 to now, that have worn number 1 off the top of your head?
Terrell Brandon is another notable one for
Well,
sure.
that was 96 to 97, so that was before 2003. But bonus points for that.
I know he's a notable one. There's Dante Exum, Derrick Rose.
Okay.
Golly, those two. Derrick Rose really sticks in my craw. You said Boobie Gibson already.
Yep.
Carlos Boozer was before his time.
Well, 2003. So he was the cutoff here. So let's do those 3. Here's some of the other ones.
Oh, and I have more. Jarrett Jack is another one too. I forgot the Jarrett Jack experience.
Okay. There's two other ones you haven't gotten yet, and I'm going to give you 10 seconds to see if you can get at least one of them.
Dante Exum, Derrick Rose, Jarrett Jack, Daniel Gibson, Terrell Brandon, Carlos Boozer, James Jones.
Okay, the 2 you missed post 2003, the modern era, let's say, of Cavs basketball. Rodney Hood and Sauce Castillo himself, Nick Stauskas.
Rodney Good, man. I was so hyped about him, but thanks for asking about me, Chris. I'm good.
Hey, I haven't even finished the housekeeping notes yet. And notably of Rondo, doesn't seem like he's going to play on Tuesday. And Isaac Okoro, which is going to be the focus of our show today, is going to miss 2 to 3 weeks with a left elbow sprain because he suffered it when Domantas Sabonis had a screw on him and he was in a lot of pain, and he's now going to miss some time after an MRI revealed the elbow sprain. But Evan, how are you? Everything okay over there?
Yeah, it's good, man. We're like an early 2000s Halo Machinima. We're red versus blue on this episode. If you know, you know.
I don't know, so that's cool.
Chris is wearing Nike. I'm wearing Champion. I'm still confuddled by how Champion became like an expensive brand, because growing up, Champion was like the Kmart brand of athletic brands, and now it's like $60. Like, I got a Champion's like crew neck sweater for Christmas, and I'm pretty sure my parents paid like $60 for that crew neck, unless they got it like on a deal somewhere, which is just weird to think about. But one more housekeeping note: Darius Garland is back today against the Memphis Grizzlies, because this is Tuesday's episode. Because of as of the 7:30 p.m. injury report, he is no longer listed. I asked JV Bickerstaff about this as well during media availability on Monday on whether or not Darius and Jetty were able to practice, and JB took a long pause and said, Darius, yes. And then I said, so is he a game time decision? And he said, yeah, he's a game time decision. And it seems the decision was already made because Darius Garland's available. So much like the Red Skull would say in Avengers Infinity War, a soul for a soul to get the stone. And the stone is a championship ring, because JB made it clear that Rondo's most valuable contribution to this team is showing how this young Cavs team can win, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But let's talk about
I
Isaac
brought that
Okoro.
full circle. I'm really proud of myself right now, especially
You
because I'm still waking up from my nap and the fog is gone. I was very foggy before I laid down because I was just like, you know what? The fine folks at Locked On Cavs need to be completely tuned in, not confusing jersey numbers for our 30-minute show.
Again, you
But
brought it up for the second in a row. I didn't even have to do it to you.
I
Just so
know,
we're
but we
clear.
had a listener chime in when I announced Rondo was wearing number 1 just from the press release. So like it's better than 63, LOL. And I was just like,
That's not true.
harsh,
I want
harsh.
that is
Um,
wrong and factually incorrect. But
didn't
Evan,
didn't want didn't want to engage, but I thought to myself, well, thanks for listening. That's
yeah,
all I
that's
thought.
cool. That's cool, but you're wrong, listener. But look, here's the thing. Here is, I think, Evan, the micro review. Let's say on Isaac Okoro. I think this is just a bummer. We'll get into the structure of the roster and things like that. But I think for me, the bummer is frankly just like the developmental part of this. I think is just sort of tricky
Mm-hmm.
because this is a guy who'd gone through a really really nice stretch, who had gone through a really really nice stretch of games before he goes in the COVID protocols. Has come back out and had some positive moments and has
Mm-hmm.
had some and has had some really so good positive contributions to this team. And now he's going to be out of rhythm again. And let's just say he misses the full 3 weeks. I'll take him towards the end of January. He'll have a couple of weeks, like a little chunk of games there before the All-Star break. He'll get some time to come back before the break, but then he'll go on break again. Obviously, this one season will not like define his whole career. You would like there's some expectation of okay, what can you do all your way? Can you still stay in shape, stay engaged, things like that. This is an injury, obviously, that's going to like send him home or anything like that. But it just is a bummer that he, for the second time in a year where it's going to be really important for him to continue to develop, to get to work on his shot, to get to perhaps handle the ball right now because of this Rubio injury, that he's going to be out at a time where Rondo is now going to be integrated and Evan Mobley is kind of finding his sea legs a little bit as a scorer and a creator. And there's just something developmentally that I think is tricky for Okoro to manage here. How the Cavs will reintegrate him, kind of get him back on this developmental path, will be worth watching. I think when he comes back, that is to me like when this news first came through. Obviously I think there's some rotation implications here, but the developmental part of this is probably what I'm most fascinated by, kind of seeing, and it's just a bummer for Isaac from I think that point of view almost more than anything else.
Yeah, I'm interested about that. In terms of development, it's more of a continuity thing for me. I think about Larry Marketing a lot now. He was sidelined with COVID and how this was not really optimal, suboptimal to say the least. Something I've been saying too much lately. That he was withdrawn from the starting lineup and the rotation in general because he had to build that familiarity of sharing the floor with 2 other 7-footers and Evan Mobley. And Jared Allen, and at the time, Colin Sexton was still available, and Darius Garland as well, and then Okoro and everybody else too. You really hit the nail on the head for me, though. It was like Okoro is still trying to find his spot in this dichotomy in the Cavs offense because Garland is obviously the primary ball handler and initiator. The Cavs are going to be leaning heavily on him. Like, I know Rajon Rondo is going to be a factor in this rotation when he does join the Cavaliers, and like he will be an initiator of this offense, but like they're going to be playing Garland 35 minutes plus a night every given night if they're able to. I feel more uncomfortable than saying that. And after that, like obviously you have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley who are going to be your primary backers as well offensively, and Okoro is one of those guys who is still adjusting and learning how to play without the ball in his hands. He shared with us before the season started, like this is the hardest adjustment period of his life in terms of basketball because he's always used to playing with the ball in his hands and just having all these options in the offense laid out in front of him, whether it was in high school or at Auburn or at times during his rookie season last year. But the Cavs are really moving him off ball and trying to make him more comfortable. And that is the biggest development issue for me. It's not just that, but like the familiarity that goes hand in hand with that, which is like learning the ticks and intricacies because Isaac has 2 brand new teammates in Marketing and Mobley that he has to share the floor with, and Darius, who's just coming back, and Jared Allen, who he's still trying to get familiar and playing with. And like, this is a big blow for the Cavs. And like you said, we'll talk about the rotation stuff. I've been thinking about that more so than the development thing, but now my mind is really running through this, and I'm just
It's
curious to
very
see if
tricky
it's
time.
going to be. It's tricky for sure, and it's unfortunate. We're not trying to be shilly, I guess, but it is unfortunate this Cavs team seems to unfortunately get the bad breaks in terms of injury stuff all the time. Like When it rains, it pours. It feels like the Cavs maybe will get a player back, but they lose a player or two in the process. I just want to see this Cleveland team have a fully healthy roster. I mean, obviously factoring out Ricky Rubio and Colin Sexton because they're out for the season at this point. Um, but for the majority, like I want to see a fully healthy roster and kind of see how this Cavs team ticks and how it operates, especially when they start to get into the thick and the meat of this season. Because again, you mentioned at the top, they play Dallas and Atlanta back to back and late at the very end of March. Like that game could have some serious implications for the Cavs on if they want to be a play-in team or a playoff team, or if they're fighting to get in that spot to begin with. Because we're gonna have a really clear vision of who is and isn't in that race at that point. And if the Cavs drop a couple fat L's because there's still some bumps in the road, like it's not good.
Yeah.
That's just all I'll say.
I have one other developmental take I want to get to after the break before we move into the rotation stuff. But Evan, first you got to tell everyone about our friends at TrueBill.
I sure do. Did you guys know that free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Do not, and I mean do not, let greedy corporations pocket your money. So download TrueBill today to take control of your subscriptions. TrueBill is the new app that helps you identify to stop and helps you stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or just simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with TrueBill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, TrueBill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your account and TrueBill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in just one tap. And your TrueBill concierge is there when you need them the most to help cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. They've saved over 2 million users and they've helped them save over $100 million. Like Matthew B., who says, in a matter of seconds, I saved $660 for the year on my DirecTV bill, saved $120 a year on my Sirius XM bill, and saved $840 a year on car insurance. Do not fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today like Matthew B. at truebill.com/lockedonnba. That's truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could literally save you thousands of dollars a year. truebill.com/lockedonnba.
Okay, we're back. Here's my other developmental take, Evan. And I don't want to linger on this, but I think the other thing worth noting here is I do think this Cavs team, as an organization, I think as a project the next couple of years will be to shore up the depth of this team in a real way. I think this Cavs team sneakily is not particularly deep. It is not particularly full of guys that I think you would particularly count as rotation players. And I kind of would expect what we've seen based on this year, what we've seen on JB Bickerstaff's instincts, is like he is going to probably contract this rotation and lean on the guys that he trusts. I think Denzel Valentine, in theory, like would have been a guy you could have seen get some minutes with the core out. He's now gone because the other news, like the Rondo trade is completed, but it became a three-way deal where like he went to the Knicks, then was waived. Like I at this point, like I don't really think it's worth expecting a ton from Dylan Windler. Like Brandon Goodwin's been fine, but we don't really even know how long he's realistically going to be around. Like there's only so much of the multiple big stuff you can kind of run out. Like Jetty's not back and obviously out of COVID protocols. Sexton's out for the year. Like I think we're at a point where this team clearly is lacking on wings. And I think as we're scratch off your bingo card. And as we look ahead to like this team the next couple of years, because they're not going to be flush with cap space, because they're not going to be flush with the ability to go out and spend and replace some of these things, whether it's via the draft, whether it is via the G League, whether it is via like finding their own version of Jay Sean Tate, or turning someone like RJ Nemhart into like an actual piece. I think them getting looks at these kind of guys and hitting on at least one or two of these guys to be like a 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th guy will be kind of important for this Cavs team to maximize whatever this era is going to be. It's tricky to do. It's harder. It's easier said than done. There's no doubt about that to me, but it's just when you are down Osman and then down Okoro, and it's like, well, there's like no wings on this team when these two guys are not healthy and Valentine's now gone because you went out and got another veteran point guard. It's just sort of glaring. And like I would expect a big chunk of Lamar Stevens minutes. But Evan, when you think about Okoro now being out, and now he was starting at the 2, we would expect that the starting lineup otherwise will be Garland. There's that big now blank spot at the 2 guard, Markkanen, Mobley, Allen. That will be the 5. If you're going to say, okay, who am I going to slide in as my starting 2 guard? What do you have like a take on what you would do there?
Against the Grizzlies, it's probably going to be Lamar Stevens. The Cavs have done this lineup before with Garland, Stevens, Markkanen, Mobley, Allen. In theory, it's It makes sense because you're trying to add a little bit of that defensive upside that Okoro brought to the table. It's nowhere near the same. It's not apples to apples necessarily. I think it's a little different, obviously. Sorry, I just saw Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty of criminal
No, we're
fraud.
not. This is not Locked On Toronto, Evan. Keep it on. Let's go.
Just very happy to see that, but I think it's going to be Lamar Stevens, but maybe you see Rajon Rondo playing a lot more than you expect him to. I asked you this the other night, or last night actually, when the Okoro injury initially happened, and we had no clear idea of how long he would be out, but we both assumed he would be out. Gun to your head, would you see more of Kevin Pangos or Brandon Goodwin until Rondo is available? I think you're going to see one of those two getting some minutes as well. Maybe Goodwin gets another 10-day deal, and maybe see, this is where it gets tricky because Carter Rodriguez did point this out to me that Pangos' contract is guaranteed this year, so you can't just waive him and add him to the roster. So
they are not gonna light like that money on fire just because Goodwin is like a marginal. If Goodwin, in theory, let's say he is a actual marginal upgrade, they're not just gonna light the guaranteed money on Kevin Pangos' contract the rest of the year to like give yourself like a little bit of a like. It's just not something a team at this stage is really gonna do, nor a team that is in the cap situation that it is. You know, it's just not something they're gonna do.
They can always waive either Taco Fall or RJ Nembhard from their two-way deal and sign Goodwin to one of their
yeah.
two-way
Well, and if we're being
the limitation of two-way players playing between the Premier League and the G League has been eliminated because of the COVID situation. I don't know if that's a permanent change or if it's temporary, but that's always an option too.
Yeah. Frankly, if we want to be like, if I want to be kind of like, if I'm going to just say this out loud, I think clearly the guy you would waive there would be Taco. That is no disrespect to him as a player, but like Nembhard is a wing who like gives you depth at a really needed position. And like, I like, honestly, like you could have made argument that like Kyle Guy might have been worth as like if you were that worried about point guard depth, you could have gone that route with a 2-way like at the beginning of the year.
Playing
like
pretty well for the Heat right now.
Made the graphic and everything. It was pretty crazy. But I think I would expect Lamar is the guy. You could feel, I don't necessarily feel like that, like they're going to treat him like they treat Okoro, and he's not going to be able to defend. Like the thing that is kind of going, I think, kind of particular for this Memphis game is like Okoro would have defended Ja. Absolutely. And now, like, Lamar is not quick in that way as a defender. Like, he is better. He can defend threes. He can defend some fours. I thought he did actually a really nice job kind of fighting against Sabonis inside against Indiana on Sunday. He's not going to, like, go and do against John Smith. Now, Ja is a monster. Like, he is an all-star caliber player. He's one of the quickest guards in the league. I don't think Okoro exactly would have, like, put him, like, he would have put him in, like, difficult situations, but he wasn't going to completely shut him down. I think, you know, Lamar's chances of doing that are probably even a little bit less. I would expect Lamar as the guy. I wonder just because of I wonder if JB would maybe just like say, okay, we're going to like start Goodwin just because like I want another guy that can dribble the ball. And like, I wonder when Rondo comes available, if he does that, even though like I said I didn't like the Garland. Wasn't sure like the Garland Rubio thing was going to work. Like before the year, I thought if Rubio was going to be meshed really well with one of those guys, it was probably going to be like him helping kind of overcome some of Sexton's limitations. It ended up being that Garland Rubio was like an incredible combination as long as we saw it. I'm pretty skeptical that like Rubio Garland is a thing that like works. Like I don't think it works defensively, and I don't.
Garland, Rondo.
Yeah, excuse me, Garland Rondo. I don't think Garland Rondo is a thing that is going to. I don't expect that to work, but I also could understand it's like okay, like we are really going to need some creativity on the floor, and I wonder if that factors in this decision here. And like we are not going to know this until like because of how JB is one of those coaches that is like, I'm never naming my starters. Like it's like he just doesn't want to do it. Brad Stevens famously does this. Nate McMillan does this. This isn't just like a JB quirk. It is like a thing a lot of coaches do. But we're gonna find out like 5 minutes before the game when like someone on scene like Kelsey Russo will tweet like, "Oh, like this is what it says in the jumbotron" or whatever. Like that is when we'll find out. And I would guess Lamar Stevens. I think that's the correct guess. What? You're not gonna be in Memphis.
They're in Cleveland tomorrow.
Oh, dude, this is how backwards I am because of just everything. Evan knows I'm not going into it. There's just my head is just like. I'm like Dennis Rodman.
Take yourself a depression nap like I did and clear your head.
I feel pretty good. It's just I'm like Dennis Rodman. Like Oh, sure. They played Memphis opening night when Darius Garland hurt his ankle, and like does that feel like 9 years ago at this point?
It does. I turned 29
God.
in a month, so it's my last year in my 20s. So I'm already dreading 2022. But
Yeah.
no, I agree, man. I think it's just going to be interesting how the Cavs approach this. I agree that Garland Rondo, I wanted to say Garland Rubio as well. Like it's
Yeah,
interesting to
it's
see
it's
how
double
that,
R's.
especially after talking about Rubio so much, it's hard to still to believe Rajon Rondo is a Cleveland Cavalier, but Rondo just doesn't have the same scoring punch that Rubio does. I wouldn't necessarily say punch either. It's just the fact that Rubio knows that the Cavs need somebody to take those shots at some point, and he's not going to meticulously wait for the offense to unfold like it is because it's a young roster. Maybe Rondo becomes cognizant of this, and we see a player who's actually not hesitant to take shots at times like Rondo can. Um, but we'll see how that develops. I think it's a good lineup in theory if you can kind of get Mobley. And Mobley is definitely not being gun shy anymore, which is a fun development during all of this too. If Mobley continues to take as many shots as he does, maybe having two playmakers like Garland and Rondo on the floor with him at the same time is a good thing. Ditto for Jared Allen if you really get those two going. And Markkanen as well. Maybe Markkanen finds a little bit of his shooting stroke again, especially if he gets more wide open looks like he has been in the past. But well, I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see how it works. I definitely think it's going to be Lamar tomorrow at home, where Martin Rickman and I both will be, Chris,
Look,
because
Evan, you can't
I
accost me for this because you know I have legitimate reasons. So
I know
don't
you have
even
legit.
come at
No,
me.
no, no. We Martin and I both teased you about you to Bill DiFilippo, and then we immediately both said, "But Chris is doing the morally responsible thing. We shouldn't
That's
give him
right.
too much shit."
That's absolutely correct. So come at me. Just as a note before we go into break, Garland, Stevens, Markkanen, Mobley, Allen has played 11 possessions this year as a group according to Cleaning the Glass. He has the Garland, Rubio, Stevens, Mobley, Allen has played 6 possessions. So like those are the only lineups that have featured Garland, Stevens, Mobley, and Allen as a four. That's 17 total possessions. So like we're like that would be new territory. Yeah,
Just
that
a
would be kind of
touch.
just a touch of new reality there. Okay, after the break, we're gonna dive into more of Cavs Grizz and talk and just throw a little some stuff to look out for in this one. Okay, Evan, I gotta tell you the guy that I'm like most excited to like watch, and I've watched him a little bit this year.
John Morant.
Well, no, I'm gonna give
Oh,
the NBA hipster pick. It's Desmond freaking Bain, man. Shouts to Desmond
mm.
Bain. That guy rocks.
He does. The Celtics traded him, correct?
Yeah, like there's a lot of teams that should feel bad about not having Desmond Bain. And I know he's like a
Jazz.
little bit older, but like Memphis, like Dallas should feel bad about it.
Yeah, Desmond Bain is one of those players. He kind of is falling into that Chris Middleton category of me, where if I could copy and paste and put him on the 29 other teams that he currently isn't on, the league would just the overall product of this league would improve. I like Desmond Bain a lot too. He torched the Cavs to open the season. He really took advantage of Larry Markkanen not being a traditional three by nature. I'm curious to
Yep.
see how the Cavs handle that because I think having that Okoro wrinkle, like you said, they probably would have thrown Okoro one shot to start the game, slow him down a little bit, and maybe every now and then they switch it so they can force like they put Garland on Morant, and maybe they put Okoro on Bain. I think they'll obviously throw that out all that out the window at this point. It's tough. I wonder how Stevens defends the Grizzlies at this point. Like the Cavs are a team that pride themselves defensively. This Grizzlies team is really hot too, though. Like these are both two really fun young teams that are hot at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just kind of interested to see how it plays out. Like we talked about doing a redraft the other day, and I wonder if maybe like we talk about Zion going second, like maybe Garland should have been the second overall pick if you redrafted the 2018 draft. Like, not beneficial
2019.
for the 2019 draft, excuse me. There you go, messing up the numbers. But not beneficial for the Cavs, obviously, but I wonder with how these two are just their stars are rising. Like Jaw is probably gonna make the All-Star team this year. Garland is going to be an All-Star for the Cavs at some point in his career, hopefully soon. For
Has a
our
real case
sake and the
this has
hashtag
a
content.
has a real case this year. I think him and
Oh,
Allen
he
both.
does.
I think Tom Ziller had him. The great Tom Ziller, his Good Morning Basketball newsletter, had both Garland and Allen on his All Star rosters for the East and the West this year. He wrote a really good column about that as well that people should go check out in that newsletter. But
Mhm.
anyway,
No, it's a great newsletter. I saw that too. I look at the grand scheme of the Eastern Conference. I think you can make a case for Darius, but he's going to be reserve. It's going to be tough just based on
yeah,
how the other coaches feel, and I think it's just he's going to be one of the first four out, like in a March Madness situation where Darius is
yeah,
just kind of
like maybe
unfortunately
Drew,
right on the
yeah,
edge. But
like Drew
yeah,
Drew sneaks in over him as like a veteran and yada
oh,
yada.
Drew Holiday should to me feels like a lock for the All Star team this year. He's so freaking good.
Yeah, I love Drew. Just notably about Memphis, they are playing on Monday. As we're recording this, they are in the first quarter playing Brooklyn. Their starting lineup for this game, because they also are dealing with some COVID stuff, is John Morant, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., Steven Adams, and Killian Tilly, who they just converted from a two-way deal, I believe, or like a hardship deal of some kind to a 2-year contract as they kind of shuffled around their roster a little bit. And they're playing guy like Brandon Clark, and they have some other guy like Tyus Jones and stuff. But their starting lineup right now is like a little funky. Like if this same starting lineup plays the next night, like the Cavs could reasonably have like three, like could be like three bigs playing three bigs, which would be like a very funny, weird thing to see. I mean, you could have like
Hmm.
Allen guarding Tilly or Adams, Mobley's guarding Tilly, and then like Markkanen's defending Jaren Jackson Jr. Like some version of like these kind of things over there, and that could make things like a little theoretically a little easier on the Cavs, and instead of like them having like slow mo and other guys, and like I think D'Anthony Melton and um Kyle Anderson, and I think obviously Dylan
Well,
Brooks are all in COVID
if you look at
protocols.
the
So
Nets, yeah, no, but like you're mentioning all these players on the Grizzlies, and we talked about this earlier about how the Cavs just kind of need depth at key positions. God, I envy Memphis's position even more than they already were because the folks over at the Grizzlies SB Nation affiliate asked me to just answer some questions based on like for a mailbag or on what the Cavs and about the Cavs and the Grizzlies game, and like they asked me like, well, what do you think of the Grizzlies? Like, yeah, I'm envious of their position, but I think they're both in a good place now. But like the Grizzlies should be where the Cavs are going next, where they find like good young rotation talent that just supports their key players. In this case, John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. and mostly John Morant. But like Brandon Clark's great. Killian Tilly's great. Slow Mo's great, even though he is in health and safety protocols, like you said. Dylan Brooks is great. Like there's so many good players on this Grizzlies team. And I'm just sorry to cut you off, but like that's just what I've been thinking about is just this Cavs team just kind of emulating Memphis in some way, shape, or form like that.
yeah, I think this game will be interesting. I getting getting Darius Garland back for this game in particular is like very fun. I would not like expect him to be like peak Darius Garland from the moment he's back on the floor, but a lot is going to be thrown at him.
Hmm.
Um, Like this is still kind of the Cavs are getting closer to full strength, but this is still something of a patchwork roster. This is still a team lacking depth. Memphis, obviously, in a very similar situation. Teams are still just kind of persisting right now. Like as noted, the Cavs are getting Garland back. Osman's still in protocols. Now Okoro's out 3 weeks, and that like just it's a continuous sort of cycle of can you survive the various dudes you don't have on your team right now, and that is a tricky place to be. Evan, any final thoughts ahead of this before we kind of skedaddle here?
No, not really. Hopefully Sean Coleman, co-host or just the host of Locked On Grizzlies, one of my favorite voices to listen to. Hates me dearly, but would rather tag me than you in Twitter stuff.
I
Hope
mean,
he's doing well.
frankly, like nice of him because like Twitter's bad, and like you can be our on very online of the two of us, you can be the online guy. I'm good with that.
I'm not really on Twitter that much anymore. I'm actually pretty proud of myself. Like I'll tweet stuff, like I'll read a few things, then I just move on with my day. Um, the vitriol, like a friend of the show, Birdman Joe, that says like I don't know how you put up with some of the shit people say to you. I'm like, well, I don't read 90% of it anymore. I just don't go looking for it. So um, sometimes there's some people who annoy me that I look up and I just roll my eyes at. Um, but this, I don't know, man. I'm interested to see how the Cavs look with Garland out there. Like you said, he's probably not gonna be full bore because he has to kind of get reconditioned in some aspects, just when it comes to getting back on the floor. Like again, I'm curious to see how he bounces back from it because Laurie Markkinen didn't really have that many complications. Evan Mobley's doing okay. Jaron Allen's doing okay. Kevin Love said like the hardest thing for him is learning how to like catch his breath and just breathe properly while on the floor again. I'm wondering what camp Garland falls into and what kind of like lingering effects COVID has for him. I hopefully nothing severe, obviously, but yeah, it's good to have him back. I think we're going to see a lot sharper of a Cavs team offensively. It's still going to be muddy. I think it's going to be a little mucked up at times, like it was against Indiana the other night. But I'm excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, should be fun. That is going to be it for this episode of Locked On Cavs. We'll be back after Cavs Grizzlies to recap that game, talk about the fallout there, talk about the return of one Darius Garland, and dive into whatever else happens at that one. And if you want a great second listen after you finish making us your first listen, may I suggest the Locked On Bets podcast with Lee Sterling as the gambling expert and hosted by your boy Q. So that's free and available on all platforms. That is your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. If you want a third listen, Locked On Browns. The Browns, as we're recording this, are playing a pretty, maybe not as meaningful as anyone would have liked, but they're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jeff Lloyd will probably do a great job breaking it down. I'm just saying, go check that out.
And
Anyway,
if you need
it's
a
been.
fourth listen,
Oh, okay.
come listen to Locked On Cavs again on YouTube and give us a subscribe. We're close to 1,000.
Smash that freaking subscribe button. Help us cook those books and make a little extra money because we all like money. Anyway, it's gonna be it. I'm Chris. He's Evan. Be well, stay safe, etc., etc.